Hi, I'm Mr. Bowen. I teach English here at Sheldon School. I've got a short story for you called The Gulf. See if you can work out what's going to happen by the end. The cold, thin air in the back of his throat was like swallowing swords. But he ran until the sweat burst through his skin, until the sweat dried to salt. He ran until every searchlight, floodlight, and white winking barrack window was out of sight, and he was running in utter darkness. He ran until night gave way to morning. Every moment he expected to hear the shouts or motors or the barking of dogs on his trail. With sunrise, he allowed his hopes to rise too, like a hot orange ball of flame within his chest. Might he, after all, make good his escape? Might he reach safety against all the odds? No one ever did, they had told him. No one ever would. But the hope kept rising in his throat until it buckled his mouth into a smile. Then he reached the gulf. He almost ran straight into it, a gorge of such dizzying depth that the river in the bottom was only a green thread, a canyon so wide that a horse at full gallop could not have leapt even halfway across, and its sides were sheer. Juan fell to his knees, grazing his forehead on the bark of a dead, fallen tree, his arms over his head. Had he come this far to meet disappointment, like a snake across his path? There was no way over. The gulf stretched as far as the eye could see, right to left. He could leap into it or wait at the brink for his pursuers to catch up with him. But he was done for. It was true. No one ever escaped. No one ever would. When he raised his head, Juan saw a little girl watching him. She stood on the far side of the canyon, rubbing a twist of grass between her hands. "Want to cross over?" she said. In the silence of the empty landscape, her voice floated easily over to him. She did not have to shout. She spoke the dialect of the neighbouring country. The river gorge must be the border, then. Juan had reached the border, a stone's throw from safety. "Is there a bridge? Anywhere, a bridge?" he called. No bridge, but I could fetch my sisters." She put her fingers in her mouth and whistled shrilly. Juan gave a laugh, somewhere between a bark and a sob. Much good her sisters would do him. The girls came dawdling out from the long grass and regarded him with the same solemn brown eyes. Each was rubbing a twist of grass between her hands. "He wants to cross over," said the sister. "Better tell the brothers," they said. 10 boys emerged from the swashing grass, carrying sickles and armfuls of grass. They sat. Down on the far side of the ravine, dangling their legs over the rim, their hands began to work in that same nervous, habitual motion, rubbing the grass stems together into long, tasseled cords. "Go home," said Juan, glancing over his shoulder. He did not want them to witness either his tears or his recapture. He had no idea how much of a lead he had gained on his pursuers. 8 hours? 9? "They're chasing you," called one of the boys, swatting flies. "I thought I could reach the border, but the gulf, I didn't know." Their sunburned faces expressed no sympathy, no sadness at this predicament. Their small, worn hands just went on, twisting grass. "I'll tell the mothers," said the littlest boy, and ran off, his bare feet unsettling flies in clouds. The village must have been just over the ridge, for he soon returned, towing his mother by the hand. For the first time, Juan realised that the grass twirling was not a nervous habit, but a livelihood. The mothers, handsome women with shining plaits to which their babies clung, were also twirling the grass together into fibres, their big hands worn horny by the coarse stem. They contemplated Juan with large, dark, fringed eyes You need help, said one. Juan laughed hollowly. I'm past helping. This golf did for me. The women called the children together, took their cords of grass, and began by simply rubbing to splice the thin length into thicker, longer ones. Fetch the grandmas and grandpas, they told the littlest boy. What do you think they're doing with all this grass? Away he went, and fetched back with him the old people of the village, mumbling, bent, bone-weary, old bodies, who shook their heads and clutched their shawls round them. Even though the day was hot, one old matriarch, her hat as big as a bundle of laundry, plumped down amid her skirts, and the women laid the grass cords at her feet, as if paying homage. Her whispering palms twirled their individual cords into one long rope, with a deftness which defied belief. For a few blessed minutes, Juan watched with such intent fascination that he forgot his own peril and strained to make out what magical process, what cunning craftsmanship could twist this grass into rope. Then, with a jolt of hope as sharp as a kick, he realized the rope was for him, to get him over the ravine. What well-meaning, simple fools. Inwardly, he raged with bitter laughter. Even if they succeeded in making a cable strong enough to carry the weight of a man, long enough to span the gulf, how would they get the end across to him? It was impossible. So much work, and for what? Around him, the evening breeze sprang up, and Juan found he had sat all day by the gulf watching the children and grandparents and mothers opposite labour over the rope, which now lay coiled at the old woman's feet. That same breeze carried on it the sound of jeep engine, of siren, of his pursuers. What's the point? What's the point? He bawled, and his voice dropped into the ravine like a rockfall. The little girl, the one he had seen first, lifted up a coil of the immense rope to show him. It was all she could do to raise it off the ground. Father will help, he said. He is coming soon. It reduced him to tears, this little mite's touching, ridiculous trust in her father. What would he prove to be, after all, but yet another pigeon-chested peasant in a straw hat, chewing betel nuts and hoping for a quiet life? A man like Juan. The little girl's father proved, however, to be a big, energetic man, a hunter. When he arrived, his jeans and shirt dusty after a day on the plateau, he found the village assembled by the ravine, saw Juan, saw the rope, and instantly restrung his bow. His grandmother threaded a needle with sewing thread and stuck it through the grass rope, then gave the thread to her grandson. He tied it to his arrow, and without a word, to Juan, fired it straight at him. The arrow gouged up the soil between Juan's feet. With trembling fingers, he snatched the cotton, winding the loop so tight round his hand, and that his fingers went blue. The rope was heavy, but the sewing thread did not break. Like a great anaconda, the rope's end sagged its way across the ravine, and Juan made it fast around the log. The strongest of the villagers took hold of the other end and braced themselves. The jeeps were visible now, bouncing over the rough terrain, the evening sun flashing on their windscreens. Do you think Juan is going to get away, or are they going to catch him? Will the rope work? In the normal way of things, Juan could never have brought himself to do what he did next. But after so many people had done so much, he could hardly hesitate. Hanging like a tree sloth under the grass rope, he crabbed his way over the yawning, heart-numbing terror of the vertiginous drop, fixing all his thoughts on the beauty of the hawser, the 1,000 different shades of yellow and green, all interwoven into one speckled cable. How could something so strong be made of simply grass? The seed dust made him sneeze. The jeep skidded to a halt, just as hands, old and young, calloused, closed in Juan's hair and round his arms and through his belt and pulled him to safety. Then the villagers dropped their end of the great rope into the ravine. It thumped against the far wall, shedding a shower of seeds. Juan jumped to his feet and shook a defiant fist at the men on the opposite bank. In his raised hand was a single twist of grass. Why do you think they helped Juan? Why do you think it required all of them to make a successful escape for Juan? What's the writer's message? Okay, I hope you enjoyed this story. Thank you for listening.